rose petals several inches deep. Bridal arches wrapped in chrysanthemums and lilies of the valley dominated the center of the room. As the guests began to file in, they whispered of the exquisiteness of the display of the high caliber of guests who had made sure of attending, even at such short notice, for the invitations had arrived only a few days before by hand delivery. There was Mrs. Astor, behind her dark veil, present despite the ill health that had kept her in for much of the season and prompted rumors that she was ready to abdicate her throne as Queen of New York society. She rested on the arm of Henry Lair, that winning bachelor so often spoke of for his flair in leading cotillions and issuing bon mots. There were the William Schoonmakers, making their way to the front row. Young Mrs. Schoonmaker, she was the second lady to wear that honorific, blowing kisses and adjusting her blonde curls and ruby tiara all the way. There were the Frank Cuttings, whose only son, Edward Teddy Cutting, was known to be such good friends with William's son, Henry Schoonmaker, although since mid-December the two had been seen out together only a few times. There were Cornelius Neely Vanderbilt III and his wife Nee Grace Wilson, who as a debutante was considered too fast and had nearly caused her husband to be disinherited. She looked regal now, in lace-trimmed velvet panne, her auburn hair done up in elaborate curls, as much a Vanderbilt as anyone. But for all the well-born people taking their seats, there were several who were notably absent, for amongst those 100 or so guests, a far more selective list than the 400 allowed into old Mrs. Astor's ballroom, there was one great family unrepresented. This omission was to many strange, and beneath the gentle string music that announced how very soon the ceremony would begin, one or two of the guests whispered about the absence. Meanwhile, the wind whistled around the building. The icicles hanging from the eaves glittered. The last guests to arrive were urged to take their seats, and then a set of groomsmen in black tails, not the shorn dinner jackets that were the namesake of the resort, moved purposefully to their places. The last of them, Teddy Cutting, cast a glance back to be sure his friend was ready. As the music rose, the crowd nodded approvingly at the sight of Henry Schoonmaker. His dark hair slicked to the side and his handsome face imbued with a new maturity, taking his place at the altar. Was that a touch of nervousness in his famously rakish features? Was it excitement, or was it trepidation? Then he, and indeed every set of eyes in the room, looked down the aisle, where the loveliest debutantes of New York, dressed in glacier blue chiffon, began to emerge. They moved in a slow march, one by one, across the little mountain of rose petals toward the front of the ballroom, trying as best they could to put away their girlish smiles. When the opening strains of Wagner's processional played, the sylph-like bride appeared in the frame of the first flower-laden arch. The beauty of that girl was remarkable, even to her family and friends murmuring in their seats. She was dressed in her mother's bridal lace, and a massive bouquet of frothy whites tumbled from her clasped hands. Her emotions were obscured by her ornate veil, but she moved forward to the altar with a steady purpose. It was just as she took her place across from Henry that the door swung open and a young member of the staff appeared, breathless, and whispered into the ear of the woman stationed at the entrance. A cold rush of air was followed by a quiet gasp, and then an almost inaudible murmur. The intermittent whispers that had begun before the ceremony doubled, then tripled, and now created a low hum in the room even as the Reverend cleared his throat and began the ceremony. The groom's dark eyes roamed across the room. Even the bride stiffened. The Reverend's voice droned insistently on, but the faces of the assembled no longer seemed quite so placid or joyous. A growing discomfort had reached the privileged class even here, where it was warmly ensconced in its winter palace, even on the titillating verge of celebrating the union of two of its brightest members.